Browns are the most dysfunctional team in the NFL. Period. No. Full stop.
The Cleveland sports media world just exploded. Jason Lloyd came locked and loaded with analytics. Cold, hard numbers designed to end the Shedeur Sanders debate once and for all.
He still doesn't know what he's looking at. He still doesn't flip protections. He doesn't know when he's hot. This isn't me saying this. I'm not an NFL. I've never claimed to be an NFL coach. This is people in that building will tell me he still doesn't know how to flip protections. He doesn't know when he's hot. He doesn't know what he's looking at. He can only throw to wide open receivers. He doesn't make tight window throws. He doesn't throw guys open. This is not the answer. These last 2 weeks were the opportunity coming off the Titans game to show that he can be the guy against playoff contenders, and he has not lived up to it. This is not it.
Jason Lloyd wanted to end the Shedeur Sanders debate once and for all, but G. Bush, he had other plans.
Was he could not play in structure, and he was a one-throw type guy, boom or bust deep, right? But guess what? He shows you on film. The next week, he's able to come out here and throw the ball on time. The next week, we talk about running backwards. The next week, he shows he can step up in the pocket. Cosell talked about it. There's multiple. I'm not the only one to say it. Chase Daniels talks about it. Multiple quarterbacks talk about the progression. So my thing is, we can sit here and bring up a number that we looked up and said, hey, he's the worst quarterback of all time. But if you watching the game, nobody that plays the game of football, watch the game of football, or all the people that talk about it is not going to say that Shedeur Sanders is the worst quarterback they've ever seen.
Well,
That's
what's your favorite quarterback? I think we've talked about this.
This wasn't just a debate. This was a massacre. And by the end of it, Jason Lloyd's entire argument lay in ruins. Let's break down how it all went down. The Browns lost 23-20 to the Buffalo Bills. Another close game, another loss, another week of Cleveland sitting at 3-11, staring down the barrel of a top 2 draft pick. And the question that's been haunting this franchise for weeks finally erupted into the open. Is Shedeur Sanders the answer? Historical comparisons that paint Shedeur as statistically one of the worst quarterbacks in modern NFL history.
By dropback per EPA, he's worse than Jamarcus
Okay,
Russell.
explain that. I know we've talked about it before.
It
but
takes
for those
into
that might not know
account down
that
and
number.
distance, field position, home or away, time and score. It is the most all-encompassing metric that you can use to measure a quarterback. It takes into account records.
That's not hyperbole. That's not hot take territory. According to Jason, that's data. The kind of data that should end debates before they even start. But G. Bush, he wasn't having any of it. G. Bush came out swinging with a message that cut to the heart of the entire analytics movement in sports. Numbers don't tell the whole story. He fired back with something that resonated with anyone who's ever watched a struggling team try to develop a young quarterback. Context matters.
Go watch what Kenny Pickett did the other week. He threw for like 5 yards. They told us he was the best option. Keep looking. Jackson Dart, I think he threw for like 32 yards yesterday. Like, maybe that was earth-shattering. Go look at Cam Ward and what his numbers are. His numbers have not been great the entire year.
This system that's been dysfunctional all season. The offensive line ranked dead last. The receiving core gets the least separation in the league. Quinshon Judkins, the starting running back, got hurt. And somehow, Shedeur is supposed to elevate all of that? G. Bush called it out. You can't evaluate a quarterback in a vacuum. Here's where the debate gets really interesting. Jason Lloyd leaned heavily on EPA, expected points added, as the definitive measure of quarterback play. For those who don't know, EPA measures how much a quarterback's performance adds or subtracts from their team's expected points on any given play. It accounts for field position, down and distance, game situation, everything. And by that measure, Shedeur Sanders is historically bad, the worst since 2000 according to Jason's research. But G. Bush fired back with a reality check that sent shockwaves through the panel.
And we be watching people all the time. I just watched the game Jackson Dart play, one of the worst games I've ever seen.
But G, I don't understand what Jackson Dart has to do with anything.
But
we're not discussing whether Jackson Dart should be the starting quarterback.
No. What I'm saying to you is, I'm not talking about discussing. We look at EPA stats and numbers in a vacuum, and when I go down here and I look and I'm breaking it down,
the point. EPA doesn't account for scheme. It doesn't account for talent around you. It doesn't account for coaching. It doesn't account for the fact that your offensive coordinator might be getting fired. And most importantly, it doesn't account for development. This is where G. Bush really started cooking, because he made a point that's been echoed by Shedeur supporters for weeks. The goalposts keep moving. First, the criticism was that Shedeur couldn't play in structure, that he was just a one-read, deep-shot quarterback who couldn't operate in a pro-style offense. Then, he showed he could play in structure. Against the Bills, his average depth of target was just 1.9 yards, the second lowest in the last 2 years. Everything was quick, underneath, on time.
Who here has changed the goalpost?
Listen, we talk about the conversation.
Well, but you keep saying like we're changing the goalpost.
The goalpost in the beginning was could not play in structure. Right? What I'm saying is the narrative around Shedeur Sanders was he could not play in structure and he was a one-throw type guy, boom or bust deep, right? But guess what? He shows you on film. The next week he's able to come out here and throw the ball on time. The next week we talk about running backwards. The next week he shows he can step up in the pocket. Cosell talked about it. There's multiple. I'm not the only one to say it. Chase Daniels talks about it. Multiple quarterbacks talk about the progression.
So what happened? The narrative shifted. Now, rookie in his 5th career start, and G. Bush called that out too. Because if you're constantly changing the criteria for success, then no quarterback could ever satisfy the critics. But here's where the debate took an even more interesting turn, because G. Bush pivoted to something that Jason Lloyd actually agreed with. The Browns are in a terrible position, no matter what they do.
The Browns ain't even really in no position to take a quarterback if they wanted to. If you think about it, do you think with a rookie quarterback in the same line and no weapons, you think you're going to get more than 4 wins? No, you're not getting more than 4 wins. You'll be back in the same territory.
This is the trap. If Andrew Berry stays as GM, and reports suggest he will, then he's facing a brutal reality. Take a quarterback at number 2 overall, and you're committing your entire draft capital to one position, while the offensive line remains a disaster and the receiving corps stays barren. Keep Shedeur and build around him, and you're betting on a 5th-round pick who statistically ranks among the worst quarterbacks in modern NFL history. It's a lose-lose scenario, and G. Bush laid it out in devastating fashion. In the middle of the chaos, the panel took a detour that actually illuminated the entire problem with the Cleveland Browns. They talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers, how the Steelers have had 3 head coaches in the last 55 years, how they've made the playoffs 22 consecutive seasons despite having mediocre quarterback play. Jason Lloyd dropped a spat that should make every Cleveland fan sick. The Browns have only taken a quarterback in the top 20 picks twice in the last 55 years. Tim Cush, Baker Mayfield. That's it. And both of them got the Browns to the playoffs.
The Browns are the most dysfunctional team in the NFL. Period. Full stop. And yet people think that they're going to be the team that can take a late round pick and develop him. They can buck the odds and do something that very few other teams can do. No, they have to be handed a pretty close to finished product to have any chance at success. And that is not Shedeur.
That's the harsh truth. The Browns don't develop quarterbacks. They don't develop anything. They're a perpetually broken organization that keeps reaching for miracle solutions instead of building sustainable success. And that's why this Shedeur debate matters so much, because it's not just about one player. It's about whether this franchise has learned anything from decades of failure. Let's get back to the core of the argument, because ultimately, this debate comes down to a fundamental question. What do you trust more, the eye test or the numbers? Jason Lloyd trusts the numbers, and honestly, they're damning. Shedeur's EPA is historically bad. His touchdown to interception ratio is troubling. His performance in critical moments has been lacking. But G. Bush trusts what he sees on film, and what he sees is a quarterback who's shown steady improvement, who's learned to move in the pocket, who's displayed deep ball accuracy, who's led the team in rushing 3 weeks in a row.
When you are evaluating a quarterback on a bad team, you have to take what you can and extrapolate and say, can I get better with this guy? Can this guy get better? Does he show me the tools and traits, whether it's his acumen throwing the football, or does his team rally around him, that I could say with improvements here, and here, and a new play caller and what we want to do, Can he be successful? To me, he has the basic traits.
This is the crux of the disagreement. Jason sees a finished product that's not good enough. G. Bush sees a developmental prospect with upside. And here's the reality. Both could be right. So where does this leave us? The Browns are picking in the top 2. They have a chance to draft Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, 2 quarterbacks who are considered more NFL ready than anyone Cleveland has on the roster. Jason Lloyd's position is clear. If you're picking number 2, you have to take a quarterback, because the odds of finding a franchise quarterback outside the top 10 are slim, and the Browns have proven they can't develop late-round picks. G. Bush's position is equally clear. You can't just keep resetting. You can't keep burning first-round picks on quarterbacks while ignoring the offensive line, the receiving core, the entire infrastructure needed to actually win games.
That goes into it. The offensive line is the worst in the league statistically, and that's not even debatable. When you take a look at the receiving core, they get the least amount of separation. They don't catch the ball when it's open.
And that's the impossible situation the Browns find themselves in, because both arguments have merit. The truth? This franchise is so broken that it doesn't matter who they draft. Until they fix what's broken at the top, until they build a sustainable infrastructure, until they stop making catastrophic decisions at the top, they'll continue to waste talent and ruin careers. Shedeur Sanders might be the guy, he might not be. But the real problem isn't the quarterback. It's the organization that's been failing quarterbacks for 3 decades. And that's what this debate really exposed. Not just disagreements about one player, but the fundamental brokenness of the Cleveland Browns. G. Bush torched Jason and Jay on live TV, but the biggest burns? Those are reserved for the franchise itself. Because until the Browns fix what's broken at the top, none of this matters. Not the stats, not the eye test, not the draft picks. Nothing changes until everything changes. And Cleveland fans, they know that better than anyone.